Hey everyone, once again, we are live here for Who Are They? Spin from the Reel, a Schmodown reaction show. And once again, I'm Matt.
And I'm Chris. What's up?
And we got a lot of Schmodown. Well, not as much as we did last week, but we have a decent amount of show. Yeah, not last week we had a ton to talk about. But we got the promos to talk about. We have the Star Wars match that just ended about an hour ago to talk about. We got a decent amount of Schmodown to talk about, and we're here to talk about. We're gonna try to do the Star Wars match without spoilers.
No spoilies because it just happened. Literally just happened.
So if you want to watch that, you can go catch it on Twitch and then come back. Or if you want to watch that, you can go ahead and wait for it to come out on YouTube, whenever that may be. But I know that they're doing this tournament exclusively on Twitch for the time being. At some point, the playback's probably going to hit YouTube. But until then, who knows? But Chris, how's your week been? Because I know we talk almost daily, and it's just
the week, because today was weird, because today was actually the first day where I actually didn't feel like I was in quarantine for a bit, because I was outside doing stuff in the yard, whatever. And I'm like, today's actually a normal day. And you had reminded me about the Star Wars tournament, because I forgot that it was exclusively at least premiering on Twitch. And I'm like, okay, that's the Ace and Quevedo match. I'm like, okay, I'm so in. Like, I'm rocking with it, and I'm intrigued. And after you telling me what had gone down during the stream,
because you had other things you had to attend to.
Yeah, I'm eager. I'm eager to talk about the play-in match for the Star Wars tournament. Not only, but like you said, there's a butt ton of promos that came out. It's the Schmodown has this fire under it right now, and I am so stoked to see where it goes, because we just got done with the last batch of in-studio tapings with the Pride and Real Rejects. So now
I was really hoping for Real Rejects to pull that one out.
Aren't we all hoping for Real Rejects to pull out a win? No, they're the new Wildberries.
I can't even say they're the new Wildberries, because they've proven they're actually real right now,
and they're good. And they're good.
It's weird because they're taking it seriously, unlike when they first came into the league.
Can I talk about that match for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I just watched it. It was earlier today when I watched it for the first time, and I thought the Pride were gonna hit the ground running and plow through anyone in their way. And the winner of that match is gonna take on the winner of Final Exam and Take 13.
Yeah.
So I was curious, is the Pride just gonna run over the Real Rejects? Because they're good, but they're not like top tier tag team good. And we've all known that shit. Even they know that, So I was curious to see how they were gonna go. And I'm not gonna front, watching that first round, Ben was on it, but Rachel Silvestrini, I was listening to it. I'm like, this is weird. Like, Rachel, something must have been going on that day. She must have had a bad day or bad week, whenever that taping was, because that wasn't a Rachel that we had been hyping up for months.
Right. Like, the first few matches she was back, she seemed like she was on the verge of becoming an A1 player, or a top tier player, whatever you want to call it. And then that match, she seems to stumble a bit, but we got to talk about Goddard, man. Goddard has just been hitting it nonstop ever since he came in.
When I would have had, if you would have told me the guy that was producing SCN was going to be this monster that was going to carry a team in the Schmodown, and especially he carried the Pride in this match against Real Rejects 1000%. Because like I said, Rachel wasn't on it, and that could have easily just been like the hiccup, She could easily just be, that was the one game, and she's gonna go back and be that potential top tier caliber player. But Ben was just on it. And I think the one question he missed in the first round was about what was it? It was about Serenity.
Yeah.
And which Serenity was it exactly? So he just misheard the question, got the correct actor in the movie that he thought it was, but he just misheard the question, and that was really it. And then obviously the opponent's choice in the second round, and in a category that they weren't strong in the 80s. And the third round, it was Ben's really coming out, and I can't wait to see what he does going forward, and what the Pride does. Because if Rachel really brings it like how she has been, then they're going to be a top tier team going forward.
Yeah, and I should mention right now, as of right now, I think on Wednesdays we're probably going to stick to this 8 o'clock, 8:30 time slot with the all the Star Wars tournaments going on, because we'll get on right after the tournament, talk about what just happened.
Hell yeah!
Without
No
as many
spoilies.
We'll try to do it without spoilers because sometimes something may slip. Just like a curse may slip here and there, even though we're trying not to curse on this show at least. All the other most of the other shows are like free range.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. But yeah, let's get to that first promo. That first promo we got of the week. That Ken Napzok promo.
Oh, Ken. From a guy that has a pro wrestling background, he's really embraced the character aspect of the Schmodown. My man's gone through multiple iterations in the Schmodown. He's done his face and his heel turns, and they've all been successful in my eyes. Ken was one of the most captivating characters in the Schmodown. He's, to me, character-wise, he's up there with a Roca and an Andrew Guy. Because he can bring it. Like, he's no stranger to cutting a promo, and he always backed it up at the table. So when I heard that Ken had this promo in front of the Real Rejects Pride match, I was like, okay, what else could I expect? It's gonna be good because it's Ken, and he's been retired, unretired for the last few months. Like even when he got drafted, it's like, is he even gonna play?
Right.
Like, is he even gonna be a part of whatever team he's gonna be a part of? And his promo that he cut in front of the Pride and Real Rejects was about the trade.
It was about the trade. It was about how he's using the Schmodown. Ken seemed completely unhinged, and that's what I love.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God.
He talks about, he's like, to the commissioner who just won't let me retire. And
it was so weird. And the images he had going up on the screen, the videos that he had.
It seemed like it was coming out of a horror movie because, like, you had the dude just cut in random. He wouldn't even be in the shot half the time, but his voiceover was still there.
I loved this promo so much. If this is one of the better ones that I've seen in recent memory that actually made me go, wow, this is top tier. This is going to be game changing for how promo should be cut going forward.
And it was
just the extra time he put. Yeah, and he talked for so long. Like, he talked for a while. I thought he was going to go 2-3 minutes.
You were
7 minutes.
Captivated. And you look after that, you're like, oh my God, that was 7 minutes?
Yep. It was wild. It was wild.
Just crazy.
It reminded me, and to use another pro wrestling reference, as I'm wearing my Hulk Hogan t-shirt, what's up? He reminded me a lot of like a broken Matt Hardy. And for people who don't know, Matt Hardy was this guy. He essentially was just this neutral guy. He was a regular guy. That was his character in pro wrestling. And then one day, since he'd always been mistreated and misused in wrestling promotions, he decided to be broken. So he started speaking differently. He almost became like possessed by this different entity. And it was horror-esque. And they would have, like, he would just use this different inflection in his voice. If you haven't looked at Broken Matt Hardy, it's one of the most interesting things in wrestling of this past decade. It's so incredible. And he's still doing it to this day on AEW Dynamite. But that's what this promo reminded me of. Yes, we love a good heel turn. Thank you, Taylor. And this reminded me of Ken really embracing that heel character. He was, especially towards the end of the promo, especially when he took the mask off and you just saw his face, but his voice was still going over the promo. You could still hear his voiceover in the back. It was so Matt Hardy-esque. I loved it so much. Like, it was that extra oomph the Star Wars tournament needed. And now I'm eagerly awaiting Ken's first match against the winner of Quevedo and Cabrera. But this Ken promo, I thought Ken already was a king of one of the kings of the promo, but I really hope everyone else watched this and was like, damn, I got to step my game up, take the extra second to do some editing, chop this thing up, and really deliver some A+ stuff.
Yeah. To me, I think it just reaffirms his new commitment to the Schmodown because he over his last few matches he hasn't been producing, and then people are you see he's getting these lower end players, like he's playing the winner of the play-in match, and normally in any tournament the winner of the play-in match it's not like it's this huge thing. You're not in a position where you're expected to win out. He's at basically the bottom of the bracket.
And he even mentioned that in his promo. Yeah. Like, where he said, he didn't want to play anymore. He had told Christian, the chairman, he had told him he didn't want to play anymore. And then Christian told him, "You're going to be in the draft." And Ken was like, "All right, like I'll be in the draft.
I'm going to retire." Christian's like, "You're not retiring."
Yeah. And then now that Ken's back, he made it seem like Christian wanted him to be that stepping stone for this up and coming talent that we're seeing.
Tired of it.
The Demilantas, the Kellys, the Molly Damons of the world. And we're not going to see that stepping stone, Ken. I don't think we're going to see it. And I feel bad for the winner of this play-in match because they're going to take that. I
change my position from last week because I remember last week I'm like, I think he'll lose in the second round. He'll beat the winner of the play-in match and then lose in the second round. But I'm like, after that, I'm like, I'm not so sure about that anymore. Like, he's got a different feeling to him right now.
I hate to keep bringing this match up, but I mentioned last week one of my favorite matches of all time in the Schmodown is Knapsack Whitwer Iron Man Star Wars match.
Yes.
It's one of my favorites to rewatch and to go back to because that's the Ken I expect to see now going forward. Because after that match, it was everything with Ken had changed after that. And I think we're going to see that Knapsack again. As crazy as it is, like, because Sam Whitwer is probably one of the most like terrifying players that the Schmodown's ever encountered in any division.
Right.
And Ken going up against him, narrowly losing by one question that arguably shouldn't have been asked in the first place. Ken's got this new fire under him. He refuses to be the stepping stone, and he's not going to. Honestly, I was with you last week. I thought, Kelly was going to beat Sullivan and Knapsack will beat the winner of the playing game. But now
I just think Knapsack might take it. I think it might end up being Knapsack versus Damon or Demolanta. I really do.
Ken might even take this thing in its entirety. If we get this monster that is Ken Knapsack, that how he used to show in the Schmodown when he had that passion, he's terrifying. He is a Sam Whitwer. He is a Demon Alex Damon, like caliber player. But these last few matches that he had, like you said, didn't really prove that. Right. But this promo proved all of us wrong. All of us.
Well, let's take a minute and look at the possible the storyline outcome or going forward. Because if you remember from earlier this season, we had that cut scene with Grace and Ken, and she's talking about, I think Sean Sullivan could even beat you. And if Sullivan beats Kelly and Ken beats the winner of the playing game, you could have that Sullivan Knapsack matchup, and that's a storyline that was kind of set up that we were probably for sure going to get earlier this season. But now we know for sure it's a real possibility. Well, we don't know for sure that it'll happen, but we know it's a real possibility that that could be a storyline we finally get. And honestly, that's a storyline I'd want to see personally. So,
and with that Kelly Sullivan match, that's probably, and I think we mentioned this last week, that's the most anticipated match to see in the first round. Because those are two tanks in Star Wars.
Well, I'd say Scrimshaw and Demolanta is my most anticipated match.
So, I want to say that I said Kelly and Sullivan. I don't remember. My memory's awful. But if it's not Scrimshaw Demolanta, it definitely is to me Kelly and Sullivan. And I've seen the reaction online and within the Schmodown community, and it's torn. The community is split right down the middle of who's going to take that match. I've seen people really back Sean Sullivan after his match against Adam Wint not too long ago, and Laura Kelly proven herself at the live events, and the live events are arguably the most polarizing setting. I would say, and I obviously haven't been to these tapings of the bigger shows like a Spectacular or a Collision, but it's probably more terrifying to be in front of fans, the biggest critics of this whole thing. And Laura Kelly proved herself at the live events for your first time competing. That's a big deal.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Her first event was the match at Celebration Chicago, the actual convention match, not the big live event at where we met, but the smaller play-in match for that. Who's going to get to play Damon? Who's going to get to play Alex Damon? So that's what that she's just she's got a fire under. I think having the ability to have played in that live event back in December is going to help her going forward in this tournament.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll say this: I feel like we're going to see some of the best performances ever in the Schmodown period with these tournaments.
We should 1,000%,
because the lights aren't on you now. You're in an environment like if you and I were in this, and we'll technically be in this one when we do our tournament. We're in an environment where we feel comfortable, where we feel safe, and we're not going to have the scrutiny of all these people just across the room watching us
right behind the camera. No, yeah.
So I think with the performance we saw in today's match, where if you watch that just proves it, because there's a player who just killed it, and the last time we saw them play, it was just like, yo, what happened?
This whole doing things over StreamYard, Zoom, however they're doing them, it's going to be, like I said, it's going to change the game a little bit, because now, like you said, there's going to be no audience behind the camera. The only audience you have is yourself and whoever's on the stream with you. That's it. You're in your home, you're in your office, like you're just going to rock. Geez, some people might be in their bedroom, as comfortable as a spot you can be in. Yeah, like you can be just chilling, as comfortable as you can, answering these questions. And because we've seen some incredible performances out of competitors at the table, at live events, but some people might bring their best game from their house. And this era of the Schmodown is going to make new stars. And I think this Star Wars one specifically is going to legitimize the Star Wars division, because I think the Star Wars division has gotten a lot of flack, and I've been no stranger to, like, I've given it flack as well, because we see maybe a match, 2 matches a year,
3 tops.
Yeah, 3 tops. Like, we haven't seen too many. And Nick, I'm really excited to compete in that tournament as well whenever we start it. But the Star Wars division now with this tournament, we're really gonna like light a fire under it and essentially make people realize that the Star Wars Championship, like, it shouldn't be treated as a special event thing. And if we have all these competitors in it, and we're gonna get new ones as we go, like, this is gonna be no joke. It'll be up there with the Inner Geekdom to me, and I love the Inner Geekdom is my favorite division.
And that division just both those divisions keep growing.
Yep.
And like Star Wars, not as fast because you don't get as much content to fill that with, and especially with the future of Star Wars being on TV the next few years, they might. I know it's the movie trivia Schmodown. Technically, Christian may have to be like, I gotta throw the Mandalorian in there. I gotta throw Kenobi in there. I gotta throw Cassian in there.
It wouldn't surprise me. It would not surprise me at all. I honestly expect it.
In the future, yeah, I agree. But let's get back to these promos. Yes. The next promo we had was Brandon Hanna. Or was it Saul next? Or was it Saul, then Brandon, then...
I want to say Saul had the first one. Saul had this little... Because he was being interviewed.
Call to action. So
Saul had his little bit talking about Hanna and how he's butthurt, how my man is, how he's essentially, he thinks he's being mistreated, but he's not. And Saul, this guy, this essentially a fan, coming into this, Brandon Hanna, and Saul just coming at him. Like, this is an instance where I don't know the relationship between Saul and Brandon Hanna outside of the Schmodown or outside of what we see, but my God, like, if they barely know each other, then Saul really just went for my man's head. Right. It was crazy.
And it should be noted that I think Brandon had a series of tweets where he's like, I don't know Saul, this, that, and the other. And that's part of why Saul came out with this promo. He's like, you don't know me, but let me tell you about you, because this is the guy who's going to take you down. And I was just like, I am here for it. This is like Saul. We know Saul's a funny guy based off of when we had the call-ins available on Collider Live. But now to see this different side of him, this like monster who's ready to play and ready to get out there, I was like, oh, hell yeah. This is the Schmodown.
We talked about it. We had talked about it last week on the show when we had broke down the tournaments.
Yeah.
And Saul was like, that was the question mark, right? Like, we knew Hanna like was slipping a little bit, and the trades that involved him, like, we were questioning that particular matchup. But this Saul one the first Saul interview promo was it just was the first domino, and this whole domino effect, because multiple people were involved in this, but Brandon Hanna arguably had the biggest bit.
Yeah. But you want to talk about the 7-minute promos again. Hanna came out with one where he's at just blackness around him. He's the main focus. Everything's black. He's wearing all black. The Hitman's there, and he's just like, all right, Saul, you've had your 2 minutes of fame. Now let me talk. He takes shots at Call to Action. He takes shots at Saul. He takes shots at Kate. Like anyone he could take a shot at, he did.
Anyone that's crossed him in the Schmodown, essentially.
Even
anyone that's crossed him.
He went at Bateman.
Like, we need to cool it. And Ben had retorted with the tweet talking about how he fired Brandon Hanna after a couple matches. Yeah. That was pretty funny. But the craziest thing about Brandon Hanna's promo was that he is essentially burying himself in the process. Because he just made a fool of himself. Like, in my opinion, like, I love the passion behind it. He meant every word he said. Like, I loved it. But boy, you made a fool of yourself. And Call to Action had responded saying that, yo, we were fans. Like, we were fans of you. You were a part of us. Like, you were with us. You were on Call to Action multiple times. Schmo Bates. Like, he went after Schmo Bates, the show that they do.
Right. He's like a knockoff movie fights with a late night name trying to. I was like, wow.
Like, and that's a show he had been on before. And I don't know the host of Call to Action, but I love.
I think Paul Denuzio is one of them.
Like, one of them retorted.
I think it was Paul.
At the Brandon Hanna promo. He's like, bro, like, you've been on the show before. Like, you've been on our program multiple times. So what's the big deal? Like, what's your gimmick? And I'm thinking, like, why is Brandon Hanna lighting himself on fire? Like, why is he antagonizing everyone in this path? I get it. He has a chip on his shoulder. He has something to prove, especially after the beating that Saul gave him in that little bit of a promo, the first one that Saul did. And he's like, oh, I got to retort. I got to prove to everyone, prove to Kate, who traded me, prove to Saul, my competitor in the Inner Geekdom tournament, and prove to all these fans that are crapping on me. Like, I got to prove to them what's up. And like I said, I love the passion behind it. But man, he went after everybody and going after the podcast, the fan podcasts of the Schmodown, and then
making comments like, you guys are only doing this because you aren't good enough to be on the show. I guarantee you half those people are good enough to be on the show. We've seen it with Take 3 Productions and all of them. They have some of the fan leagues are. There are people who are good enough to be on this show, and they've come from those leagues. So let's just, when I heard that, I'm like, pause. Stop right there, because we know that's not true.
Yeah, it's like, we gotta cool it. Like, we gotta cool it, Brandon Hanna. And if he takes the L to Saul, there's no coming back. There's no coming back for Brandon Hanna. He made this a must-win match for him. What he should have done was save the talking for the match. Whenever the hell that's gonna happen.
That should have been the promo before the match.
Yes. Why are you gonna wait? Because I think the Inner Geekdom tournament starts June 2nd. So why cut it now? Be ridiculed for however long until your match airs, or until your match is streamed. And if you lose the match, what a waste.
Yeah.
What a waste. Because now you're burying yourself, you're burying the fan podcast that you were frequently on, and you're crapping on other factions that may or may not take you in the draft coming January.
Right. Especially with how the new format's supposed to go.
Exactly.
You brought up crapping on Saul made a point about he's crapping on all these people and building up his numbers so he can have his network after the fact. He's like, okay, buddy, I hope you got those numbers you need because you're going to be done for the season afterwards. And I'm like, that is the kind of competition I like to see. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of, and it was passionate. Like, Saul, like we said, we don't know how Saul's going to play.
Yeah, but we have no idea.
End of the day, if we're basing this off of how the promos went, I'm going to go with Saul because Saul just killed it.
But at the same time, Saul has nothing to prove.
Yes.
Nothing.
And Hanna now has everything to prove.
It's
He
crazy
has put
how
a bullseye on his back.
Saul is playing chess. Brandon Hanna is playing checkers, my man. Like this is nuts. And then Saul had retorted to the Brandon Hanna promo, just cutting again some, just continuing to bury my man on, in this community, this tight Shmona community that is quick to acknowledge this stuff and to pick a side. And at the end of the day, with this Saul and Brandon Hanna beef, Brandon Hanna has to win this match.
Mm-hmm.
And if my man doesn't pull it out, then sorry, man. Not only will Saul take the win in the promos, he's obviously going to advance in the Inner tournament.
And at that point, Hanna may as well go back to the fan leagues because the Schmodown. How are you gonna be able to keep competing in the Schmodown when what will that have been, like 3 losses in a row at that point?
Mm-hmm. And he's good. And Brandon Hanna, and he had mentioned it in his promo, 80% accuracy, which is really good.
Frankie Numbers came out on Twitter. He's like, yeah, he's not lying. He has one of the highest percentages in the Inner Geekdom of hitting his points, hitting his questions. So, hey.
Which is awesome. Like, that is incredible, and you should definitely hang your hat on that. But man, dude, like, you can't. I don't care how many questions you ask. An L's an L.
Mm-hmm.
You lost. And in the Schmodown, wins and losses matter, especially now more than ever. Wins and losses matter. And in this tournament, if you take your L first round, sorry, but it delegitimizes you. And in the crazy division that is Inner Geekdom and the monopoly that Kaiser and the Dungeon have on Inner Geekdom, you can't afford to take L's. This tournament is going to be, it can be star-making or reassuring to us that the Dungeon will not only rule Inner Geekdom, but they can branch out later in the year or branch out come January in the draft if they decide to expand outside Inner Geekdom. Because Robert Parker and Kevin Smets and Eric Zipper, those 3 guys alone, two of them are in the tournament. One of them is the champion.
Right.
And if Eric Zipper, after his loss to Stacey Howard, is going to come in with this new fire, like how everyone expects him to and how Kaiser's hyping him up to, especially after Kaiser's little promo that we'll get to in a second, which, I mean, it's not really the biggest deal. It's just pretty funny. But if Kaiser's talking as if Zipper's going to have this new fire under him and he brings that, Saul or Hanna may end up meeting Zipper later in the tournament.
Oh, yeah.
And they may catch the wrath of Eric Zipper. So who knows? We might even see the Dungeon compete against each other, Parker and Zipper, facing another member of their same faction.
No, I agree completely. But you talked about taking L's, and that brings me to the match tonight. Because, like we said, there's not as much to talk about this week. So we talked about last Friday's match, the last of the matches. We talked about the promos. We had the match tonight. Like we said, we're going to try to go without any spoilers about who won, because there are certain things we do have to bring up about the actual matches, or about the actual match. But tonight's match was just awesome. I loved it. It was the pinnacle of what I hope the Star Wars division can be and will become. And both Ace and Quevedo brought their A game. Like, it was entertaining till the very end. They both had, and this doesn't affect who, like I said, I'm not going to spoil who wins, but I'm going to talk about the match in general. They both had perfect rounds to start the match. Like, that doesn't happen a lot, especially for first-time players in this division. Quevedo being a first-time player in general, and I'm trying to find the results of Winston and Roxy's last match is of Swag versus the Rockstars, because Winston got down on that one knee and acted like he was proposing, and it was an L. And Roxy picked it up, and he said, "Hold this L." And then his team went on to win. So Roxy's, at that point, is literally holding the L. And in the promos tonight, because they had Winston and Roxy talking at the same time to begin it, because it's StreamYard, so you can come in and have them in the background and bring them both on, and they can talk trash to each other about their players.
And they had done so in the last few days,
yeah,
representing their guys.
Right. And Roxy's like, "Hey, Winston, you can take this L back." And he's like, Oh, Rox, you want me to take that L back? No, I'm good because Winston already starts with W, so I already picked up this W. I was like, all right, Winston, all right, I like it.
Let's see what's up. Let's see what's up.
But like that match or this match in general just was crazy how neck and neck it was for a while. But then you start to see this momentum switch in the second round to this one player, and it just continued that way for the rest of the match. I mean, that when you miss 2 or 3 of your questions, forget to ask about multiple choice, because that's what ultimately the loser of this match forgets to do. Like, you have multiple choice. They used all of their repeats in the second round. Didn't have a single repeat in the third. Like, you have to remember how to play the game.
Yeah, and the actual rules of the game matter in the outcome, and we've seen that plenty of time. There are many examples of people not knowing the rules of the game, and that being the reason why they lose, or the opponent being knowledgeable of the game. That's the reason why they win. It's because they strategically use their repeats, use their challenges, use their multiple choices, and apparently in this match, that decided the winner.
It helped.
That was a reason why it decided the winner.
Because if you're not taking those multiple choices, what you could have had, the person doesn't end up stealing. It was either he stole 2 or 3 of them. Mm-hmm. So that's a total of 4 to 6 points. That's huge, especially when it's only a 3-round match.
And in these niche gimmick divisions, whether it's Inner Geekdom or Star Wars, missing a handful of questions, you're guaranteed to lose, because the talent in these divisions is
hyper
top notch.
Yes.
Whether like Kevin Smets and Mike Kalinowski being 2 perfect examples. Late last year when they were having their battles against each other, the guy that broke first, the guy that missed his first question, that was who was going to lose. Yes. So if you cannot miss questions in these games, you can't. Like, ultimately, it's going to come down to the last question, as a lot of these Schmoedown matches do, but especially in these Inner Geekdom and Star Wars matches, you can't miss questions. If you do, you have to make sure, A, if their second round, go multiple choice, so you can at least knock it down to a 1-point steal, or B, you have to hope that your opponent misses them too. Like, those are the only 2 things you got. Like, it's so crucial to get your questions right. Like, singles and teams, it's a whole different game. But Inner Geekdom Star Wars, that's how you got to move.
I think your point's only validated even more by looking at the first round of this match, where they both went perfect. If they hadn't both gone perfect, who knows how that match could have been a KO instead of the TKO we eventually ended up getting.
Like, it's crazy that like Quevedo hadn't played. Like, this was his first match in the Schmoedown, and it's like, I get it, like, it's all right, whatever. But like with Ace, you would expect to see, like, he's been a part of the league, not only going to the tapings, being at those matches, but participating in them as well. So stumbling with a multiple choice or failing to go to a repeat when the time came, like, you can't excuse that. Those are things you can't do, and that's something that, as Ace, a veteran player in this case, you can't make those mistakes. Quevedo, I would get it, but still, he's a fan. You would at least expect to watch these matches and be aware of it. Like for us, we watch these time. We've been fans for years. We would at least know. I get it. The circumstances are different because you're actually competing in the thing, and you're nervous, and it's being live streamed. People are watching, but it's something that you can't excuse. At this point in the Schmoedown, you cannot excuse bad play. You can't. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Dan Murrell. I don't care if you're a rook, if you're a newbie at this thing. You're obviously aware of this. You have to be aware of the rules, because that will cost you the game. That is the Schmoedown in a nutshell. You can't miss questions, and you got to know how to play the game. And Christian will tell you that over and over, over and over again.
And that's what sunk some of these players we know who are great, like Jim Viveda, where he's always had the knowledge, but he never had the gameplay.
And that always screwed
him and his teams.
Yeah, that will always screw him. And we'll see what happens when he competes in Inner Geekdom, if that's changed or not. Like, because he's going to be on his own. He won't be with a team. He won't have a teammate. to help him out with that stuff. So we'll see his singles play. I'm curious to see how Jim does in the Inner Geekdom tournament because he's in the playing game, correct?
Yeah, if I remember
Yes.
correctly, he is.
So I'm intrigued to see how these tournaments go because it's a lot of newbies, or I don't want to call them rookies, but a lot of people who haven't played too much.
Yeah.
If they played at all, especially in these respective tournaments. But see, speaking of Ben Goddard, Jim Vejvoda is going to play Ben Goddard in the playing game to play Robert Parker, the Spider Robert Parker. So I'm curious.
I hate that nickname.
It's their best way of trying to say Spider-Man without having to say it.
Yeah.
So, but I couldn't agree with you more, my man. Like, knowing how to play the game is crucial. And I actually want to ask a question because you said you have to watch the Star Wars match earlier, and we're not going to spoil the victor. But I'm curious, how was the actual stream itself, and how did they go about having the match? Because I haven't seen it.
That's what I was about to get to before we got to the final round. So how they did it was really so. You had Christian and Mark, and then you of course had someone helping run behind the scenes. So Christian and then Christian and Mark can answer the questions, no issue. So they did their normal intro. When they did they had a video play for part of the Smack Talk before. Then they actually brought Roxy on and she talked. Then they brought Quevedo on and he talked a bit. Then they dropped both them out. Then Winston came up in, and then Ace came on in and they talked, did their bit. And what they did, which I think we'll utilize, is when it's round 2 and 3, your hands were within sight to make sure no cheating was happening.
Word. Okay. How'd they do the first round with answering questions?
Just paper, or
pen and paper? All right, word.
Pen and paper. And just kept. You can either just erase, I guess, or you can go to the next page and so on and so forth. If you have a whiteboard, go ahead and use the whiteboard. And honestly, I'm probably going to buy a whiteboard for myself.
I know, right? I'm probably going to buy a whiteboard too.
But yeah, because we actually should do that because we talked about wanting to live watch-alongs when the time comes and schedules work out a little bit better.
I would love that.
But yeah, it worked out very well. It's weird they had to keep the score up to date. They'd show you like at the end of every round what the score is. But what they were also doing is they went to the comments and posted what the score was and then shared it like we do a comment like I'll share next right now. So like imagine this said the Schmodown. It would show the score, and if someone was winning, it would say who was winning.
Hell yeah. And go Ken. Yeah, go Ken.
Go Ken. But it's an adjustment for sure compared to what we're used to because we don't see the challenges up anymore. We don't see how many repeats they have. They have to keep saying they have this many repeats now, or they still have their challenge.
So the announcers had to do that extra bit.
Yeah, that little extra bit. Okay. And they were doing it at the beginning of every round. So I'll say this: they've probably had the time to work on this and perfect this because they did those other Patreon matches that we aren't going to be able to see.
Yeah,
because they are Patreon matches.
Ones. Yeah,
the exhibitions. But because they've had that ability, it probably ran smoother than it would otherwise.
So were there like lulls in between? Like I'm curious. Like was it awkward transitioning between rounds, or did Christian and Mark keep it as seamless as they possibly can?
Kept it as seamless because unlike when you're doing a live match where you might have some talking between that they cut out that because they're moving the wheel and everything. They brought the digital wheel back, and so they just shared the screen. They just did their normal bit that they would do, and now we're on to round 2. It was that
digital wheel. I really can't rock with it.
Yeah, but it's what they had.
It's what you got to do. It's what you got to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and that's what they even said. It's like, yeah, we're bringing back everyone's favorite thing, the digital wheel.
I'm glad they know we don't like it. I'm glad they know the fans don't like it.
See, I know people really started hating the digital wheel last year when it came to the Houston match. When Ben got the 2 straight spinner's choice, and they wouldn't let him spin again. He's like, no, just let me spin again because I want him to win on my own accord, not just because people think you're rigging this.
Yeah, and even the wheel they got going on now, or they had for the studio matches, like it's super like
clunky.
Yeah, it was not even clunky. It's super. You can put little to no effort to it, and it spins for 5 minutes.
Right.
But that's the one thing about the Schmodown that will always change is the
It's
wheel,
the wheel.
how they use it. It's my favorite part of the matches. The wheel is so interesting to me. Like I love the idea of having fate decide what category you pick. But my God, like those wheels, every iteration of the wheel has had something wrong with it.
Yeah.
Whether you couldn't spin from the pegs or you couldn't take it places, you had to use the digital wheel.
Ergo our
The
name.
digital wheel.
Ergo our name. Spin from the reel, not the peg.
Hell yeah, brother. So, but those wheels, man. But I'm glad that it stayed relatively simple.
Yeah.
And that it wasn't too clunky and yet, like you said, they had the exhibition matches to really test the waters with it. But I hope that this is going to be good enough that the fan reaction is good enough for this. How you make it seem like I feel like
close to 2,000 people watching live on Twitch.
That's
close
awesome.
to 2,000 people watching live. That's just crazy.
That's really good.
And I'm curious. I'll probably go back by the end of the weekend because you want to give it a few days. I'll probably go back by the end of the weekend to see how many views it has by then.
I would love to see because a lot of people don't use Twitch, and that's been a
lot of people's complaints
on the Facebook page.
Half the time, Twitch doesn't work on phones, and
yep. I get it. Like it's been a YouTube base this entire time just to change platforms because of the pandemic. I understand. But at the same time, it's something new. It's refreshing.
Well, not only that, it gives them, because they've been doing those game nights, and I laugh because we technically did the game night first. Just saying.
Those murder trivia schmodowns.
They've been doing those on there, and so they're trying to expand more and testing different things. So you can't get mad at them for deciding, hey, we're going to put this exclusively on Twitch, so you follow our Twitch, and then we have all this extra content.
They had the Cody Rhodes interview on Twitch,
right?
Which is pretty funny too, seeing them. Because did you watch that, the Cody Rhodes?
No, I didn't get a chance to. I was at work.
I ask all these questions because when I was watching the Cody Rhodes thing, for those who don't know, he's a pro wrestler and a VP at all.
Dusty Rhodes' son.
Yeah, All American Dream son. He's the grandson of a plumber. So I was watching it because of course I love Cody and I love All Elite Wrestling, and they Jen Sturger and Brad Gilmore that had him on before the Star Wars tournament preview a couple days ago. And they talked about his match this weekend at Double or Nothing against Lance Archer for the TNT Championship. They talked about his prep for it, the rest of the tournament, the TNT Championship in general. They talked about Dynamite tonight, a little bit of it. We might see the TNT Championship tonight on Dynamite for the first time. But they had audio issues for like almost the first half of Cody's interview, whether he couldn't hear Jen or he couldn't hear Brad.
The little bit I did catch you. He just was in a poor reception area. It seemed like because he was the one
coming in and out of the session. It was a lot of in and out. Like there were points where Cody was talking to Brad so he can know what Jen said, and it was funny. But they got it cleared up about halfway through. But then they talked about Cody actually participating in the Schmodown at some point with Star Wars, and he said, "If you need me for some trivia, just let me know." So we'll keep that door open, and now that Jericho's going to be in it, I will not be surprised if we see a Cody Rhodes at some point, at least in Star Wars.
Yeah.
At the very least, and that low exhibition, or if he just wants to compete against somebody that's new as well. Bring back Bruce Green from Funhouse. He never got his due. Give my man. They asked him on that day, so give my man his proper match and have it be against Cody Rhodes. But that's why I asked, because they definitely had their issues on Twitch beforehand, but I guess they had them cleared up for them.
I think that was more of a StreamYard issue, because I know we've had issues like that at times. Where it'll seem like one person's frozen for a second, and then you hear that audio at like 2 times the speed catching up on it. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about round 3, and then we'll talk a little bit about how we think things are going to play out going forward. And so round 3. Round 3, there was a ton of drama surrounding round 3 because there arguably technically should have been a TKO.
Okay.
The person who lost for their second question was asked, who was the first Jedi we see die after Order 66 is executed? And they said the wrong name. but they said it at like the deadline of the buzzer and whatnot. So originally Winston came and was like, I think I might want to challenge that, because he did say I might want to challenge that because like it didn't seem like he got that off at the end of the buzzer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that kind of just slip up. So you have the other player come in and say, hey, like forget the buzzer thing. He said the wrong name. And they're like, oh, the writers have it as this in the doc and are in the writer's doc, and we're talking to them in the private chat. They are confident that this is the right answer. And then you just see the chat explode because every other person who was watching that knew the correct way to say this name, and the guy did not say the correct name.
And you had told me about this prior, but go ahead and finish.
So the loser who should have lost a question earlier, it should have been a TKO. They got one question, but they missed their next two. It shouldn't. And I get the whole thing, because there's the whole, did Winston actually call for a challenge, or did he say, I think I want to challenge it? Why did I slip up with the name again? Oh,
you're fine. Can't say
But it's so there's the whole thing of, we're going to look back at it and figure that out, and if it is, we're going to count it as a TKO and give you the extra points, or so on and so forth. But and this is what brings me to what I really want to talk to, and I know you and I talked about this a little bit. But you're on live. If you and Mark are the judges, Christian, why are you deferring to the writer's doc when you're already on the internet? What's the harm in opening up a separate tab and looking it up?
And we've seen many a time in the Schmodown, the thing that the writer has down in the doc where they have other questions at is incorrect. Whether the question's phrased differently, or the question's just incorrect itself, or the answer is incorrect.
And you have managers and people from this who are watching, who are at the tapings, being like, "No, this is the correct answer." What's the difference? There. What? And that's my thing. What's the difference?
When you had told me about this, and the first thing that came to my mind is, this is the flaw with doing the StreamYard Zoom matches. This is it right here, because you have to. And the big thing in the Schmodown, for those who may not watch every week or may not see every challenge, but the challenges are done in a cut. Like they stop recording, like, yo, okay, cool. Like, let's figure this out off screen or off camera. And now you have to address those things in front of everybody, because you can't
realistically, they still don't. What they could do is they can just throw a graphic, like we have our graphics here. We could throw a graphic, an overlay, and be like, okay, this is the graphic, and then they could drop all themselves out, or mute, or Christian can mute everyone, and then they just talk it out in the private chat.
This is probably something that they weren't anticipating.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them, because usually the questions and the answers are 99.9% correct. Like, at least they're worded correctly and the answers are correct. But in the odd case that there is a incorrect answer, at least in this circumstance, where the answer is obviously incorrect, then it's gone back and forth between the competitors, and the managers probably definitely had their 2 cents in the private chat, especially since they weren't on screen. And Mark and Christian are deferring to
they were on screen. That's what made it a little bit awkward.
Also, Roxy and Winston were both on screen for this.
Yeah, for like a split second. So you're sitting there, all 6 of them on screen. You're like,
and they're waiting for the private chat for the writers.
And they're talking in the private chat. And it's like, all the writers think it's right, so we're deferring to the writers here. It's like, of course they're gonna think that's right. They're the writers. They don't want to get called out.
They wrote the question. Yeah. So at least with that, we might have to consider, maybe the writers aren't the end all be all in this thing, or at least, like you said, it wouldn't hurt to pull up another browser to just Google the question real fast. And yeah, is it going to be awkward? You might have to drop the graphic, like you said, but it's no harm, no foul if it means the integrity of the game, because the integrity of this game itself is one of the most important aspects of the Schmodown in general. And you can ask every competitor, like this, like, and Christian, I think he's even said this on multiple occasions, this thing falls apart if we just let this little stuff slide. like all the time. If we just keep letting it slide, and obviously this doesn't happen all the time, but hypothetically, if it did,
it happens about once a month. We'll say it happens about once a month.
Like, and that's even if it's once a month, and maybe once every 2, once every quarter, once every half year. And this wasn't always a thing until the league was growing to the point where we had to get more questions, more,
and you had to get more writers.
Exactly. Like this is a new occurrence. So if they had to take the little break, put the graphic up, mute everybody's mics, or converse in the private chat on StreamYard, like how we usually do when we do Real Talk on Sundays, then if that's how we got to do it, then okay. But this was the one case, the first Star Wars tournament match that was streamed on Twitch. It'll probably they probably weren't thinking about this or try to just get the problem resolved quickly, especially with the circumstances of the match. I don't blame them. This is a hiccup, but if this continues to happen, then the fans will get frustrated. Competitors might get frustrated, and we're no stranger to seeing competitors get frustrated mid-match.
And then it just shifts. And see, here's the thing: if it happens mid-match, it shifts the momentum. You could have someone
fans are aware. It's like seeing your parents fight. Like, it's weird, and you obviously know what's wrong. Like, that's how we watch these matches, especially if there's tension. Like, we notice that the fans aren't ignorant to this stuff. And as open as Christian and Mark are about how the Schmoedowns ran and how they do things, especially Christian on SCN, how open he is about how this whole program is being done. Like, we know how things are going on now, and the fans communicate all the time. I see people converse not only on the Facebook page but on Twitter or on the Schmoedown subreddit. Like we see this fan conversation, and we all essentially take the same stances or agree on the same things about the game itself and how it should be ran or how it's being ran. And Christian sees that stuff and he's aware. So hopefully they just make these changes for later tournament matches, especially with Inner Geekdom starting in a couple weeks.
Right. And I will say, you got to give them props for saying they're going to take a moment to look back and see if the challenge was actually officially thrown.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't, that challenge is valid, and because they did admit, it's like, we looked at the fact and that was the wrong name. So if that's the case, and since you missed the second question, it's only fair to give those extra points for a TKO.
Yes.
Excuse me. But it's just one of those things. It's all going to be growing pains because, like we've been talking about, this is a new format. They're so used to these in-person studio things, and if you want to base it off of what we've seen, of what we keep hearing from California, they're talking about retail might not be open in LA until July 4th. So
if they can't go back to the studio this summer, they may not be there until later in the year, fall, maybe even early winter. So
working out these kind of kinks early is going to be important if that's the case.
Yes. And we're at least going to be in this StreamYard Zoom setup for at least 2.5 months, maybe 3 at the very least, and working them out now. So I feel bad for Cabrera and for Quevedo for going through that stuff in that match, but it's trial and error. And I'm curious if if it happens again, but it's a different circumstance, maybe with players that actually have been involved in the game so far and who are vocal, because we're no strangers to who's vocal at these matches when stuff like this goes down.
Bibs.
So if they maybe were to say something, or another competitor or other competitors were to say something, then, or whoever's involved, then I want to see how that's handled, especially if it's like title matches, if the implications are bigger than just a regular tournament. Granted, I'm not trying to devalue Star Wars Inner Geekdom,
but at the same time, this was a match where kind of the implications were a bit bigger because this is the play-in match. This is, are we officially in the tournament or no?
Yeah.
This is, am I able to get my team further?
Yeah, and especially now with the implication that like factions are it. Like, you need to not only win for yourself, but you're winning points for your faction as a whole. And you're not only trying to play for yourself, win for yourself, but you got to make yourself look good to these managers who may try to sign you at the end of the year, as far as we know,
or draft you,
or draft you early or later in the draft in January. If that still pans out the way we think it's going to pan out, then we gotta step up and win these matches or perform well in these matches. And if these little instances are going to happen, it's going to cause some tension, or people are going to be vocal about change in the Schmodown, more change, as if we're not getting enough change now.
Right.
So I don't blame anybody for the little hiccup. All it is that we should learn from it and move forward
and figure out how to deal with a similar situation going forward. You're right. That's the important thing.
Shouldn't try to give flack to anyone involved in that either, because it's not going to help the situation at all. All it takes is one person to say something negative, and someone else could be like, you know what? Yeah, that person's right. And it's just going to cause more tension, because it already feels like the Schmodown fans have to have a civil war at least once a month.
And I will say part of that is due to factions now, because now that we have these factions, I'm on, like I say all the time. For me, I got two factions. I'm the Finstock Exchange and Swag. Those are my two. Like the Den, I pay attention to because they got some interesting talent. But the two I'm always going to be rooting for are the Den and Swag, because Winston's the man and Dagnino's the greatest manager of all time, and he has the Horsemen. So
yeah, and ever since the introduction of factions, we're really it's cool that we have teams, and not just the individual teams anymore. We have teams to root for. It's like in any sport. I mean, for baseball, I'm a massive Cubs fan. My Cubs,
buddy. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. And with my favorite player, it may be Anthony Rizzo, but now if I have to the Finstock Exchange may be my favorite faction, and Ben Bateman might be my favorite player on that faction. So it makes it more fun for us fans that there's more factions, and that now we're actually competing as a faction. We got to get these points, but at the same time, it's causing all these infightings between fans in regards to certain players and certain events.
And that's what we talked about earlier in today's episode, because now you got this whole Saul's I'm here to put you in your place and show my manager she wasted a pick on you.
I love to see it.
Full circle. It all comes full circle, and that's what I love about this league.
The league definitely changed for the better. I do still think there are some minor things that need to be changed, just about how certain competitors do things. I'm not a big fan of infighting between factions. For example, I don't like the idea, and I mentioned it earlier, that possibly Eric Zipper and Robert Parker facing each other in the finals for the Inner Geekdom tournament. Because what's it going to be like? I'm going to beat you.
That's why we didn't get the Battle of SCN. That's why Atlanta's championship match was so weird, because either way, the Finstock Exchange won.
Yeah,
it didn't matter.
I can't rock with that. It'd be weird if Shawn Michaels was World Heavyweight Champion and Triple H was in a number one contenders match to play him. He wins him, and now they're wrestling each other at a pay-per-view. Who am I supposed to root for? Shouldn't they split up the tag team? Are they still gonna be friends afterwards? These are the same questions we're gonna have when we potentially get more matches against people within the same faction. That's my biggest concern with the faction stuff. But at the same time, they've been doing a decent job with it. The Atlanta match, that was weird. Like you said, it was super weird to see it, because Ben's still happy for Dan. It's no, he shouldn't. In theory, he shouldn't be happy that he lost the belt.
And that's why a lot of people are saying it's hard to be an Exchange fan, because they all keep talking about it. But I get both sides of it, because I get at the end of the year, it's about our faction winning, because we get something at the end of it. So when it comes to that infighting, you're just okay, well, at least we still got the points. It's not like we're really taking any L here. We get an L, but we still get the dub. That's what's important.
And I would love to see if that changes at the end of the year. When the league ends at Spectacular, when we get all the storylines are wrapped up, at least for this season, and we get to have that break before the draft and the signing period. I'm curious if that rule will change. If factions are just factions and it's not who is the best faction. If it's legitimately you're in a faction and that's just who you represent. Like that's it, nothing more, nothing less. Because I think that's how I would like it to be. Because for example, if who's the boss is gonna face the founding fathers for the tag belts and the founding fathers lose, I can't stand the idea of Roka being like, yeah, good game, guys.
See, but
Good game.
see, and that's another thing. I'm so torn with that because
It'd be cool to see, but it's like, what? It doesn't make any sense.
It's Atlanta all over again because, like,
Yeah.
Roka being the competitor he is gonna talk smack.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna say something.
Yep.
And
I don't like that.
And you shouldn't have factions breaking up because of the success of the overall faction, or teams breaking up because
and that's going to be the problem. And it's probably the worst kept secret in the Schmodown that John Roca will not be a part of the Finstock exchange come January. He won't, right? I think we can say, unless something drastically changes between now and December.
I think he's gone on record saying that Dagnino's gotten better than what he was at the draft and early on. Like there's better communication now. All that,
but there's still 7 months in the year.
Yes, and there's still there's still 7 months. There's a lot that can change in those 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes back to what we said. What the issue with this upcoming draft is, where you're going to be able to get everyone's a free agent. You're going to be able to sign 4 of them, and then everybody else goes in the draft. It all goes back to that issue.
And we'll see, because like we said last week, we fully expect these rules to change at some point between now and the signing period. If there still is a signing period, we'll see how that goes. But I think that the infights between factions, it's gonna do more harm than good. For now, if they were to implement that at like in June or whatever, just don't have factions compete against each other. For example, if your faction has a championship, your competitors within that faction cannot compete for that championship. Like, to me, it doesn't sound too hard, but at the same time, that creates a problem within the Finstock exchange. That creates a problem
because then you don't get to have Roca play as much. You don't get to have Riley play and that's the downside of it. Because with the exchange, if that were a rule, you're missing 3 of the heavy hitters in the Schmodown in their respective division.
Yeah, and you don't, and the monopoly of the inner geekdom that Kaiser has. You don't get to see Robert Parker face Kevin Smets. You don't possibly get to see Eric Zipper face Kevin Smets. And that's something that I would love to see play out. Because again, what if Robert Parker beats Kevin Smets?
That's another thing we haven't brought up. We still, we keep talking about this tournament, but we still have that inner geekdom title match that we have had announced of Chandru versus Smets.
Yeah, so we might not even see Kevin have to face off against Parker or Zipper because it might be Chandru.
And at that point, let's look at this again. At that point, share screen. You got to look at swag. I'm gonna be Paul Oyama and Adam Hlavik are the 2 people who are playing for swag. We know Adam Hlavik is the real deal when it comes to Inner Geekdom.
Yes.
So he's, if I remember correctly, he's gotten to a semifinals before, or in a tournament or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Paul Oyama's Paul Oyama. Sure, we haven't seen him play in Inner Geekdom, but the guy knows how to play the game.
Yes, and he knows his stuff.
So what if Chandru wins? You're taking away. It's all a double-edged sword, and that's the issue. Because
and that's something that needs to change about the Schmodown later. If they don't do it this season, which I don't expect them to, it needs to happen later. Like, we need to address the problem within infighting between factions. Because like you said, if Chandru wins, then we may see a Paul Oyama or Adam Hlavik go to the finals, beat whoever's on the right side, and we got an in-faction fight, and then we have to have another issue of who's Winston gonna walk out with, who's Winston gonna represent.
And if you implement your thing of not letting your faction compete if you have the championship, it takes away the playing games. So that is a positive. We don't have the playing games. We just have a full bracket because you're taking 2 players out of this tournament, and there's 2 playing games.
Like, and there were people saying like, "Yo, we shouldn't have factions compete each other on or compete on the same side. Like there shouldn't be two people from the Rock Stars on the same side, two people from the Burning Drews on the same side. If the champion is from Swag, or if the champion is from the Finstock Exchange, then I don't care how many people from the Rock Stars want to be in this tournament. Let them do that. Because they're if we're still going to do the whole faction thing, we're winning for our faction. Okay, cool. Like that's just it's just a match. Like best person in Inner Geekdom from the Rock Stars will move forward.
But also, that's also on the other side of the coin. That's the downside of these tournaments because there's the potential to win. So I know Christian said if you count knockouts, there's the potential in the Star Wars tournament to get your team 12 points. 12 points for your faction. Mm-hmm. So, and going to share my screen again. So that's just because there's the play-in match in the case of Swag versus Rockstars. If there was a knockout, they have the winner of that had the chance to get their team 12 total points if they win. So you can get 3 here, another 3 here, another 3 here, and another 3 here. Everyone else has the potential to get 9. The play-in match players have a potential to get 12. So you want to go look at the possibility here. There's a play-in match. There's a possibility of 3. There's another possibility of 3. There's another possibility. That's 15 points in the Inner Geekdom. That's up 12 to 15 points in the Inner Geekdom. That's up for grabs. And
that's not even counting the title match.
Yeah.
If we get to that point, like at least in regards to a knockout within a title match, like there are a lot of points up for grabs, and
that's why you say you and like I said, this is the other side of the coin to where you have to let them compete because otherwise you're possibly taking away all these points from a team who could be gaining them, and instead they're falling behind in the standings because you don't let their player compete. So it goes back to this is just this whole double-edged sword.
I do not expect the Schmoedown as it is to be the same next season. And we've always seen some type of change implemented. Like the last few seasons, there's been something big to happen to shake up the league and getting these factions and the faction points and the best faction wins at the end of the year or the one with the most
last
points.
Year was the draft. I forget what it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Was that corruption?
Corruption was 3 years ago.
Geez, that was 3 years ago?
Or 2.5, technically. It'll be 3 years or 2 seasons ago. Not years, but seasons ago.
Okay.
Because that was season 5. Last year was season 6, and we're in season. So it was season 5 that we had corruption.
Yeah, so that was like the big thing to shake up the league because we're breaking up tag teams, and now we still have a lot of them existing now that came out of corruption.
Right. Like founding fathers, corruption themselves.
Yeah, who's the boss? Like I think like these big shakeups that have happened in the Schmoedown, like they do it for the better. Corruption was the best thing that happened that season, and probably one of the best things that happened in the Schmoedown period because it kept when things got like when they plateaued, it got interesting. Like we're breaking up tag teams, and then competitors didn't like who they were paired up with, or some people had to back out due to commitments, but now we still see those teams and their impact in the league.
Like the founding fathers, we ended up with Team Action breaking up. It was things like
that. That was one of the better storylines that we've ever seen.
Right, because we have the Action Civil War because of that. Well, Civil War because they're not on the same team anymore, but it was just because they're like brothers, and that storyline ended up giving us the Four Horsemen. And it all boils down to it's this double-edged sword because the Schmoedown's always going to try to do something to improve and change and make itself better. But then there are the potential downsides, like the in-faction fighting. Because, yes, I'm going to say I love the factions. I love having for one faction root for.
Oh, yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's cool.
Stock Exchange honestly has most of the players I'd be rooting for anyways. Whether it be the Four Horsemen, whether it be Sabrina, Andrew DeMolanta, and the Barbarian's awesome. Like, that's part of the reason I root for that faction. Swag, Final Exam. Like, that's the talent they have is why you root for those factions.
Yeah.
But it's just like you're looking at this and it's like, okay, well, I want to root for them, but they got to play. They're on the same faction. Yeah, like Nick. And if Nick's still in here, I want him to comment on. I'd love to have him pop on in and talk because Nick came over for the live event in Atlanta. And we were like, he was rooting for Dan. I was like on the fence because I love both Dan and Ben.
Yeah,
those are two of my favorite players. Because
that's the problem, dude.
The work that Ben puts into it, and it makes me uncomfortable because you know that depending on the outcome, it's going to have a possible negative effect on your faction, and it's not right.
And that Atlanta match, to use it as an example, like obviously we didn't see it any like weirdness between Dan and Ben, and they've been nothing but nice to each other on the socials and in interviews and stuff. But realistically, to me, like, and I'm the type of guy that watches professional wrestling, and I'll be the first person to say like, yo, that's not real, or like that's not realistic to me. And the same thing, I apply the same thing to this, where it's to use that match. If I am Ben Bateman, I just won the belt in the star-making match that I had at Spectacular. Like, this is my league now. I am the top champion. I'm the top dog after working for years, being a part of one of the best tag teams to be a part of the league, one of the best storylines that Schmoedown's ever seen, to become the champion, the singles champion, just to lose it to someone in my faction who's supposed to be supporting me, supposed to be on my side. And then we saw the backlash. Who's Finstock going to walk out with? Who's he going to support? Like, where's the rest of the how do the rest of the horsemen feel about this? How does the rest of the faction feel about this? Like, that was my thing. And especially when Ben lost to Dan in a valiant effort, one of the best matches we've ever seen in this whole game. He was like, yep, all right, thanks, man. See you the next time. I'm going to go do teams with Riley. It's like, wait a second. Like, I'd be upset, dude. It's like, you're supposed to be on my side. And maybe that's the pro wrestling fan in me. That's the side where I lean too much on pro wrestling. Maybe I'm at fault for that. But that's just how I'm thinking about all this. And that's how I will continue to think about this.
I should mention we have an update on the final decision. It has been ruled a TKO in favor of the winner.
Nice.
And,
okay, so it worked out how it should have.
Yes. And Ben Goddard came out and said, we always complain about refs missing calls, them owning up on it later, but the outcome not changing. I'll skip this next part because it's some spoilery stuff. Mm-hmm. Glad Christian and Mark conferred and got the correct call. Love this sport at the Schmoedown. You got and that's part of the reason I like this, because I care about this league as much as I do, because they do go back and they try to give you the correct call or fix the mistake. And as we're talking about, yeah, there's some flaws in the actual system of it, in the lifeblood of the Schmoedown when it comes to these factions and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We know, and in Christian I trust, because he'll get this stuff right. I know we talked at length about the draft of the possible draft last week, and we touched on it a little bit today. I know by the time it comes around for the draft, he's gonna try to have the best available option out there.
It's Christian, like, if the people that may be watching this have no idea what we're talking about, it may be sound like that we're ragging on it, or that we're trying to like disrespect it, which is not the case at all. Like, as much as I critique the Schmoedown for what it is, it's just because I care and I want this to be the best that it's going to be, especially with the information and the stuff that we've gotten from it, and all the quality matches, all the quality storylines. If you were to tell me 5 years ago, it's like, yo, there's going to be this full-fledged movie trivia league that will be pro wrestling inspired, and that it will essentially have people take on personas and characters, and it's gonna be pro wrestling but with trivia. It's like, that sounds like the coolest thing ever. I want that to be great. And so far, it's been pretty freaking good. Mm-hmm. We've gotten a lot of great stuff out of it. We've got to introduce us to many different online personalities.
Celebrities.
Yeah, and now we're bringing on real celebrities, pro wrestlers in some cases, like to the point where
It's just going to become more known and grow larger from there.
Exactly. All it takes is a Chris Jericho or a Kevin Smith. Like, it's all it takes.
Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, and if we get Cody in the Star Wars division, all it takes is one match. If we get a possible, and dare I say it, I don't want to jinx it, knock on wood. If we get a All Elite Wrestling / movie trivia schmodown-esque team up partnership type of gimmick, my God. Oh man. Wouldn't that be nuts?
And them traveling city to city with All Elite Wrestling.
Wouldn't it be crazy seeing if I would go nuts if I'm watching All Elite Wrestling and I see a plug for the movie trivia schmodown? Are you joking? It could easily happen.
You're gonna have those people will be like, "What's the movie trivia schmodown? Let me go do some research." And
exactly,
and that's how Christian always talks about hooking people. I'll be honest, the matches that I got hooked on initially, because I was watching Collider back in the day, were the Campia versus Sam Witwer and Freddie Prinze Jr. matches.
Nice, yeah.
Because I was a huge Rebels fan, so I'm like, Kanan and Darth Maul versus these guys I like from Collider.
Oh, these YouTubers I watch? Yeah, man. Yeah, like, it's cool.
This is kind of cool. Let me go down this route. And I feel like I caught on just the right time because I got to
That's a good part to jump in.
Yeah, I feel like love you too. I got to see the Miro Roca match was one of my first matches because of that. I got to see all this history that are the biggest moments. Like, sure, seasons 1 and 2 or seasons, I think that was season 3 when season 3 or 4 when Roca won the title.
Okay.
So those first couple seasons, yeah, they were the foundation, but I caught on right as it was really starting to get its legs.
When they realized this could be something, that this could be something bigger than something we do on the Schmoes Movie Show every week. Like it was, let's get, like, we all work at Collider. Let's use the studio. Or like, let's bring in our friends from Screen Junkies. Let's bring in our friends from across this niche YouTube space and do some movie trivia. They talk about movies every day. We talk about movies every day. We were just talking about the crazy Snyder Cut news that we'll talk about on Sunday.
Yes.
Like,
in our group chat,
in our group chat earlier, like, we do this thing every day, and they obviously do it to get paid every day. And it's like, yo, let's do this thing.
Because you're talking about what if we end up with the Schmodown All Elite Wrestling crossover? Half those people are now using Streamlabs or StreamYard or anything like that, streaming to YouTube and making their living off of super chats and questions and all that. It's a mobile thing. Could you imagine having SCN become this thing, and then once a week you're live with, and just like I know Collider had on the Ryan, what's his name, the wrestling guy.
Ryan Satin from Pro Wrestling Sheet.
Yeah, Pro Wrestling Sheet. He ended up getting his podcast on. They bought him out or whatever it was. He had.
Man, he's killing it over there, Pro Wrestling Sheet.
But that's the thing. That's what the possibility for SCN and the Schmodown is on a smaller level.
Essentially, yeah. And ever since they got Chris Jericho to join the Rock Stars during the free agency. Or during the signings, I was thinking, like, man, who else over there, All Elite Wrestling? Because this is obviously going to be an AEW thing. Like, who's going to be, like, who knows about movies? Do the Nick and Matt Jackson know about movies? Does Hangman Adam Page know about movies? Darby Allin, anybody over there? Like, I would lose all it takes. Hypothetical. Chris Jericho comes out for a match. Doesn't have to say Schmodown at all. Just wear a t-shirt with the Schmodown on it. That's it. And that raises so many questions.
Wear a Rockstars t-shirt. What the hell are the Rockstars? Who are they? Why is he wearing
that? Do a little quick Google search. Bang. Movie trivia Schmodown. What's up? You like movies? You like pro wrestling? You obviously like pro wrestling because you're watching AEW Dynamite. Like, what's the pain? Like, where's it? Like, I don't see how this can't blossom into something. And I get it. AEW it's this established wrestling promotion. They have over 500,000 people watching their show every week, and it's producing some of the best wrestling we've seen in the last 20 years. But my God, what a push, to use another wrestling term. What a push AEW can give the Schmodown. And I don't want to get greedy, but we've already seen the Booker T stuff in Houston. Booker T used to do his predictions before matches all the time, and he still talks about it with Brad Gilmore on his Hall of Fame show. So it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time. I don't want to jinx it. We'll see what happens.
About wanting to get his own studio and making the stage in the shape of a wrestling ring or an octagon. It'd
be so cool.
It all just makes so much sense.
Like I don't want to like get my hopes up. I'm not going to. I'm just saying that this hypothetical situation of All Elite Wrestling just giving the Schmodown a little push, a little bump, so to speak, would be incredible. And it would, I think, not only would do some great crossbreeding, and yes, the problem arises, like it's only going to help the Schmodown. House is going to help All Elite Wrestling, but just a little promotion won't hurt. There are some people in the Schmodown that have wrestling backgrounds. Jay Washington is a wrestler.
He's trying to get to AEW.
Yes, I've seen him like when AEW Revolution was in Chicago, a show I was fortunate enough to go to. Jay has a big presence at that convention at C2E2 that they coincidentally were at the same during the same weekend. Jay tried to get on the card. Yeah, and this is just a better way for him. Ken is no stranger. We mentioned it earlier. He has in
his promo.
He has a background in wrestling. Christian used to write for WWE. I know we probably shouldn't say their name when talking about AEW, but still, like, we've seen people come in with wrestling backgrounds. I know we got way off topic. I just got way too excited.
We didn't, because we're talking about the possible future of the league and ways it can go.
And I think bringing in people like Chris Jericho, potentially bringing people in like Cody Rhodes, and potentially Brandy, because Brandy Rhodes, Cody Rhodes' wife, and also I believe she's the chief marketing officer at AEW. I believe that's her title. If not, then please excuse me. But she's also a big Star Wars fan, according to Cody, according to Jen. So maybe we could see more people from AEW making that jump over to the Schmodown, and who knows where it can go from there. And that's just another thing the Schmodown can use at this point. Yeah, they don't have the in-studio stuff. People are going to be disinterested because it's not the big grand entrances and the big elaborate setup in the studio. But and there are a lot of wrestling fans in these group chats or in these groups on Facebook or these subreddits or whatever. There are people that watch both products. And that's just more appeal to stick around, to watch, to care. I can't wait to watch Chris Jericho's first match, win or lose. I cannot wait to see it. Same thing for Cody. So much can happen within such a short amount of time with AEW and the Movie Trivia Schmodown, and I'm eager to see what happens. Eager.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think that's the show tonight. So make sure, for those of you who have tuned in or people who've tuned in and out, come back next Wednesday when we are talking about the latest Schmodown match, which I think is Laura Kelly versus Sean Sullivan. We'll see and talk about it then. And be sure to tune in tomorrow for Connor's birthday on Really Scared. We'll be watching.
Happy early birthday, Connor. What's up, my man? Happy early birthday.
We'll be talking about, if I remember correctly, Daniel Isn't There and Blood Machines,
which are both streaming on Shudder.
Yeah.
So if you want to be a part of the conversation, go ahead and watch.
Are you watching them for tomorrow, Chris?
No, I ain't watching those movies. I'm just saying, for people who would like to watch those horror movies on Shudder, then by all means, go crazy.
I had to ask.
It's a fair question. But there's a lot of other fun stuff we do here. Who Are They? Real Entertainment. We have Real Talk on Sunday.
We're talking all about the Snyder Cut. Maybe some of us will rewatch the Justice League to come in with a fresh perspective. I doubt it.
Maybe. Let's talk about that Snyder Cut. I don't even want to get into it now.
Yeah.
Save all my thoughts for Sunday. I already gave some people a quick glimpse into what I thought.
Right.
And I already think that was too much, and I'm spoiling my thoughts for Sunday.
But tomorrow we are also having a game night for Connor's birthday. We will be playing.
Is that before or after?
We're trying to work that out right now. It's his birthday, so he gets final say.
Just follow the social medias at the bottom for more updates on everything Real Entertainment, whether it's Really Scared, Spin from the Real Talk, like whatever it is. Just follow WattMovies_Matt for all of the information, or follow me just because I retweet a lot of what Matt's.
Or follow Taylor at Taylor C. Cleek, and because Taylor, I think I've been talking to Taylor. I think he's probably going to end up being the social media manager because he's the one who has all the social time for social media, and he's
all that social media know-how
with it. It's easier for him to do it. I think it makes my life a little bit easier. So we're going to talk about all that. But
there's a lot going on at Real Entertainment.
Yes, there is.
Come along for the ride.
Yes, and there might be a wrestling show in the future if Nick and Chris can talk and figure things out.
Maybe you can talk about all the wrestling and every WWE show that's going on right now. There's so much. Honestly, even though there's a pandemic, there's still wrestling going on. There's still wrestling to talk about, and we'll see. Just stay in the loop. Subscribe to the channel. Follow the social medias. You hear all the news.
Social medias. But yeah, signing off. I'm Matt.
And I'm Chris.
And remember, spin from the real, not the peg.